Hybrid or utility iron? It's a very common question that I ask myself, and I know a lot of golfers out there watching ask, is which type of club in that gap between your longest iron and your fairway wood is going to deliver the best results for your game. If you get it right, it can have some very positive influence on your scoring ability. Get it wrong, they can get you into an awful lot of trouble, because it's that type of yardage that does pose some pretty tricky questions. Long par fours, hitting into par fives where you want to try and reach into or get close into to give yourself the best chance of making a par or even a birdie. Get it wrong, you can get in trouble, and a bogey is not too far away. So in this video, I really wanted to test the two types of club up against each other to see how they performed, what the differences and similarities were in terms of looks and ball flight, to really help you buy a decision. So at the end of this video, you will know which type of club is best for your game, depending on where you want to use this club out on the golf course. I've got two pretty good examples of both here. They're both current models in the range, the new Ping G410 Hybrid and the new Ping G410 Crossover. I tested both of these clubs at Foresight Sports HQ on the GC Quad Launch Monitor. I'm also going to hit them on the range. I'm also going to hit them on the golf course to see exactly where the similarities and differences lie. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video. If you do enjoy it, make sure you click the like button. We'd love to also hear from you, so comment on the video, tell me which type of club you play in your bag, and will this video change your mind? Maybe you need to switch to a different type of club. And of course, subscribe to the Golf Monthly YouTube channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of our equipment review videos. You can see they have very different looks. The Ping G410 Hybrid is a lot larger from front to back compared to the Crossover. It's also Ping's first adjustable hybrid, and that is very important because it's going to help you even more fit the gap between your longest iron and your fairway wood. So you can adjust the loft to get the gapping right in terms of your distances to make sure they're nice and even through the set. So this is a 19-degree head, which I've got set at 20 degrees. Conversely, the Ping G410 Crossover, you can see, has a much narrower sole. It's got a flat face, so it's going to play more like an iron. No bulge and roll here to help your off-centre strikes. So potentially not as forgiving as the Hybrid, but it does have a tungsten toe weight there to stabilise the club face on off-centre hits, and it does have a graphite shaft like the Hybrid. It comes in at 20 degrees, like I said, but the shaft is half an inch shorter, so who knows, you might get a bit more control from this club compared to the Hybrid. But let's go onto the range, hit a few shots and go through the launch monitor data to see what it told us. Right, so come to the range here, going to clip a few away and just talk about the looks of these irons, because they are very different in terms of looks. The Crossover is basically a beefed up long iron. It's actually quite long from heel to toe, which I like. Not much offset, again, it's something that I like. And I think the look of it generally is very pleasing, and if you played the Crossover before, the G400 model, and felt it was a bit chunky, which is certainly something that I did, you're definitely going to like the slimmed down version that this offers. It looks a lot sleeker from the back as well. So let's just hit one away. Nice light feel with that graphite shaft. Absolutely smoke that. Pretty high ball flight actually. When you strike it well, you do get a relatively high flight, but obviously with this type of club hitting it off the deck, you're more likely to strike it off the bottom of the face, which will lead to a slightly lower ball flight. That's another thing to think about with the Hybrid, is that there is a little bit of bulge and roll, I believe, on this club, so you're going to get a little bit more forgiveness or more correction on those off-centre hits. Heel and toe strikes should come back a little bit more for you because of that bulge and roll properties. Now, you know, this is definitely one of the larger hybrids on the market. It's not necessarily one that suits my eye. You've got some turbulators on there which don't really do much for me. Some people might think they frame the ball a bit better, and you've got the white grooves either side of the sweet spot to help you with that. So it is a very inviting hybrid to hit. Just looks a little bit chunky for me, and it's, you know, I tend to play hybrids that are nice and compact. So I've got the Callaway Apex, the new model in the bag at the moment, which is one of the smaller hybrids you can get. So, you know, this isn't necessarily one that suits my eye, but if you want something that looks easy to hit, this is definitely one to go for. Noticeably higher ball flight. I actually found hitting this on the range today, for whatever reason, struggle with a miss to the right with this club. Normally hybrids, you tend to miss to the left, whether it's the lie angle, whether it's the weighting inside the head. Ping have really upped the anti-left on this club, which is a common complaint of hybrids, so a lot of golfers might appreciate that, but for me, just felt like I was missing it to the right. And if you've got a slice, who knows, you might even slice it a little bit more with this club. So potentially that's where you need to go and get fitted for your lie angles. Make sure it's not too flat, you're not going to miss it too far to the right. Maybe this is too flat for me, who knows. I do have my iPad here now with all the launch monitor data from these two clubs, and what's interesting with these two clubs is that there were some big differences. The first thing to talk about is the club head speed. The club head speed with my hybrid was 3 miles an hour faster than with the crossover. Now you might expect that a little bit because the hybrid has a 1/2 inch longer shaft, so that's going to be contributing to some faster swing speed, and that translated into 4 miles an hour extra ball speed with the hybrid compared to the crossover. So I think that's one of the first generalizations or summaries you can deduce from this test, is that hybrid will give you faster initial ball speeds and probably more club head speed as well. And then we moving through the ball data, you can see the hybrid is launching the ball higher. It's around 1 degree higher, so not as high as I was expecting, but it's still, you know, like for like static loft, it is getting the ball up in the air a bit more, and the ball flight is also higher, 4 yards higher on average in terms of peak height with the hybrid than the crossover with the same static loft. Spin was actually very similar, both around the 3,400 mark. One factor you really need to consider with these tests is the attack angle. So my attack angle with the hybrid off the deck hitting indoors at foresight off a mat like this was 0.8 degrees up on average, and with the crossover it was 0.3 degrees down, so it's around about 1 degree difference in terms of attack angle. Obviously with a crossover you would expect, because it being more iron-like, you tend to play it a bit more like an iron, hit down on it. Obviously with the hybrid you've got a wider sole there, it's going to encourage more of a sweeping angle of attack, which is why maybe my attack angle was a little bit on the up. So then the all-important overall distance numbers, you can see the crossover average carry of 222 with the hybrid carrying 229, so 7 yards longer carry on average. The hybrid does have a steeper descent angle, around about 2 degrees steeper, which means it's not going to run out as much on landing. And certainly looking at the rollout numbers on the GC quad, they were rolling out to similar distances, which is something you need to consider. And then it really does factor in things like the wind. That's going to have the biggest part in the distance and ball flight you're going to experience out on the golf course with these clubs. So let's take them out onto the golf course to see exactly how they play in a real world scenario. Right, so I've come from the range to the 10th tee here at Burley Park Golf Club. It's a relatively short par 4, but you can see there's a bunker down the left, trees on the right. You've got to hit it pretty straight. And now we know from the launch monitor data and hitting on the range that you do get a very different flight window with these two clubs. But let's kind of see how they perform. So I tend to peg a utility iron or a crossover down a little bit lower, and like we saw with the launch monitor data, I do tend to hit down a little bit more with the crossover than I do the hybrid, which is more of a sweeping blow. So I feel like pegging it down kind of encourages that. Down the left, let the wind bring it back is the plan. Okay, so that's perfect. And what's really interesting with this is that off the tee, the flight is actually still quite high off the tee. So it's not like, obviously I could flight it lower if I wanted to, you know, I can move the ball back and really squeeze one out there, but if you pick it cleanly off the tee, that did actually go quite high. But we'll try it with the hybrid as well. Be interesting to see how far that's gone, because I hit that pretty well down the middle. So again, hybrid, that's probably pegged a little bit too high. I still would peg this quite low. You know, the attack angle with the hybrid, it's not drastically different from a utility iron or a crossover. So let's hit this club, see if we can strike it just as well. Okay, so 2 good strikes there. Okay, that has gone noticeably higher. Looked like it went 5 or 6 yards higher in terms of ball flight, and that meant that the wind pushed it further to the right. So that's an interesting point with a hybrid. You're hitting it higher, it's going to be affected by the wind a lot more. We're not just talking into and downwind, we're talking crosswinds as well. So the G410 crossover in windy conditions is definitely more easy to control the ball flight than it is the hybrid. Let's go and see where they finished. Right, okay, so we've just come to the fairway here on the 10. This is where my crossover shot finished. Thought I hit it pretty well, but then if we scroll up, you can see all the way down there is where my hybrid finished. So I paced it out, it's 17 yards longer. So I think that kind of goes to show if you do have a hole that's slightly downwind, the hybrid with that higher ball flight is going to get you an awful lot more distance and definitely a better choice downwind. But into the wind, the crossover would probably run out to a similar distance as the hybrid, just because it's got a much shallower descent angle, much more penetrating ball flight, and similarly low spin to the hybrid. So you should get a bit more run with the crossover, which is really good into the wind. But downwind, the hybrid wins it. But crosswinds, I do feel like the crossover wins it because it's easier to control that left to right dispersion, not going to be affected by the wind as much. And you can see the hybrid is actually just in the semi-rough, whereas the crossover is in the fairway. So it's pros and cons of each, and that really does highlight the differences between the two in terms of the ball flights and the resulting places where your shots will finish. Right, okay, so that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed that video. Appreciate it wasn't the best conditions potentially to test out both of these clubs, but hopefully it's given you a good guide as to the type of performance characteristics these clubs offer. What was really interesting for me was how much that hybrid was affected by the wind. And if you tend to play maybe a links course where the conditions are generally quite exposed and quite windy, I do think you're going to struggle to control the ball flight with a hybrid compared to the crossover. You know, this kind of club, this lower launching, lower flying utility type of club is going to give you better control of your ball flight, providing you can strike the ball relatively consistently close to the middle. I think you're going to see the benefits of using this club when trying to run the ball into par fives and off the tee. Conversely, if you play maybe a lot of parkland courses, maybe it's quite flat, maybe it's not necessarily exposed, maybe you've got a slower swing speed and you need more initial ball speed and distance, I think the hybrid type club, like the Ping G410 hybrid, it's certainly a more user-friendly option that gives you more margin for error, certainly in terms of heel and toe strikes, and also forgiveness through the turf as well. It's something I noticed hitting it off the deck in testing, is that, you know, this wide sole is a bit more forgiving on those slightly heavy contacts, so it's just something to bear in mind as well. I think, you know, there are types of players that would benefit from these types of clubs. If you have more of a sweeping angle of attack, maybe you want to lean towards the hybrid. You get more out of that compared to a crossover, which I think would suit golfers who hit these clubs more like an iron. Maybe you prefer the look of an iron more than a hybrid, and that's where you might choose this club over a hybrid. We'd love to hear from you. Has this changed your mind in terms of which club might be best for you? And did you like the way that we did this test? Of course, love to hear from you. But for now, from a very windy Burley Park Golf Club here in Stamford, it's goodbye.